Welcome back again to another episode of The Contrarians. This is our regular Contrarians. You know, we've started this other show, the Worst Album Series, and that thing's been going pretty cool, and we get a lot of debate going. But this is the regular one, related to the way we started it way back when. This is essentially the show where one of us believes firmly in their heart that an album by a certain act is their greatest album, and it to be on the Contrarians, to be on the hot seat, it has to be a contrarian choice, an odd choice for favorite album. I'm not in the hot seat this time. We have Marco in the hot seat this time, and I'm here to argue and knock some sense into him with what the true best album by this particular group is. This group, however, is Alice Cooper, and I'm going to hand it over to Marco here, and he's going to tell us what the Alice Cooper album is. Go ahead, Marco.
I think a lot of people will pick any of the albums that's from like the third album to the to $1 Billion Babies. I think pretty much any one of those people would pick as being one of the Alice Cooper best albums. Some people even consider Welcome to My Nightmare as one of the best. I even have a friend of mine, Kane, who picks Trash as one of his favorite Alice Cooper albums, which kind of makes sense because that album's a little heavier. It kind of even reminds me of, like, as a Ozzy Osbourne fan, it kind of reminds me of No Rest for the Wicked-ish in some ways. I know that there's a segment of albums that a lot of fans kind of think is the weird Alice Cooper time, and people are going to go nuts on picking one of these albums as his best album. But I think when I listened to all those classic Alice Cooper albums, and I went back to research for this album, I went back and I made sure I listened to every single one again. Yeah. Even Pretty's For You, like even up to Dada and Constrictor and Trash. And I listened to all these albums, and every single album, I always find the same thing. It always starts off really good. And especially with the Alice Cooper Band albums, I love 3, 4, maybe even 5 songs I love. And then there's about 3, 4 songs for each one. And I could go and tell you the song. I'd made a huge list of notes, and I could go song for song and tell you which ones I love and which ones I'm kind of and which ones I don't like. The only album in the Alice Cooper discography where I enjoy thoroughly each song from start to finish is Flush the Fashion. And I know that section of albums, Flush the Fashion, Special Forces, Zipper Catches Skin, and Dada, I know get a bad reputation of being like this kind of new wave Alice. It's weird. I even saw, in research for this, I watched a Pete Pardo episode of Sea of Tranquility where he talked about the Alice Cooper albums, and he even says right off, he ranked them all, and he kind of put those 4 albums near the bottom and said, yeah, it's just weird, and it's new wave-ish and punkish, and it feels cold to me, and like the songs aren't bad, but I don't like them as much as kind of the rest of the catalog. And he even went and put newer stuff ahead of that kind of middle period of Alice Cooper's career. But like, I kind of disagree with that. Like I listened to, I'm going to let you get your points in, but I listened to Flush the Fashion, and I listened to it put next to Welcome to My Nightmare, and I put next to even Alice Cooper Goes to Hell, which is a great album too. Actually, that's an underrated album as well. And some of those like Alice Cooper Band albums. And like the songs, to me, they're not that different. Like you could totally trade them or interchange them. And like I just like every song start to finish. I think it starts off great. I think some of those, like Pain is an excellent song that could have been off Welcome to My Nightmare. And it's just, I kind of disagree with Pete Pardo in the sense that like that album in particular doesn't feel cold to me. It actually feels like warm, and it's kind of high energy, and every song start to finish, and that album starts strong and it ends really good. And one thing I noticed about Alice Cooper albums, especially Alice Cooper Band albums, and I know I'm ranting a lot right now, is that typically like they start off really strong and then they kind of flutter near the end. And I found with Flush, it just kind of starts strong and it kind of goes through one song to the next. There's a lot of different genres. Yeah, there's some keyboard stuff, but I find that it's actually a pretty rocking album if you give it a chance. And I feel like it ends really strong. And if you go back and listen to a lot of the Bob Ezrin stuff, like the production there's just so much production, there's piano, and it's so like overbearing that I kind of feel like sometimes I get it, some of those albums, like Welcome to My Nightmare, kind of almost feel like a musical, like a theatrical musical kind of thing, where this kind of feels more like a little bit more Stooges, a little bit more rock, a little bit more like, yeah, there's some stuff going on that's maybe a little indicative of the early 80s, but like it doesn't get as much as it does when he goes on to make Zipper Catches Skin and Dada and stuff like that, which is more like going way farther off in that direction. I would put these songs next to any of them, but I love, and I'm going to let you get your point. Sorry, maybe I'm a little, I just woke up and I drank a lot of energy drink to get ready for this episode, but I love, like, you listen to Killer, there's like 4 songs I love. And Pete says this too. He said that sometimes you listen to an album and there's like 3 or 4 songs you love so much, you elevate the entire album. And I kind of think that might be what's going on with some of those Alice Cooper Band albums. But I want to hear what you think about what I just said and what you think is the best Alice Cooper album.
Wow. Okay, Marco, that was amazing. That was really, really cool because I'm championing you all the way. And I'm a big fan of Flush the Fashion as well. But as we do here on the show, of course, I mean, I'm supposed to, like I say, knock some sense into you and tell you sort of the facts. You know, the facts in this case is that is absolutely a very contrarian choice. I mean, the big records that I've always found that that will be rated the highest are, well, let's start with, okay, well, let's go right back to the beginning. Not Easy Action, Not Pretty's For You. A lot of people love it to death. But again, I totally agree that, you know, basically once you're past the hit singles, it gets a little thin on a lot of these records. And something I wanted to bring up that you said that, you know, when you said Bob Ezrin and it's full up with a lot of stuff, I almost think of Bob Ezrin the other way, that for on these Alice Cooper albums, Alice Cooper Band albums, they're actually kind of cardboardy and mid-rangey with not a lot of bass and not a lot of treble. And sure, there's some extra layers of things put in, but it always sounds thin to me. So I do have a problem with that, and that is something that I really like about Flush the Fashion too. Like you say, it's quite guitar-y. There's a lot of neat production going on that's kind of modern, but it is interesting production as well. And the guitars are pretty thick on it. You're right. It's a much heavier album. But Killer also obviously gets mentioned a lot. I mean, Killer, we've got Under My Wheels, Be My Lover, Halo of Flies, Desperado. I mean, that whole first side is so classic. You Drive Me Nervous. You know, and it does kind of drop off. I mean, Dead Babies. But yeah, I mean, for 1971, it's a great album all the way through. There's the band. That's one of the greatest band shots of all time, right? So cool.
Yeah.
And as is that one, actually. That's a really cool band shot too. So Killer gets cited a lot as well. And also, you know, it's contrarian and sacrilege, of course, to pick something that isn't the Alice Cooper Band, because Dennis Dunaway is such a huge creative part of this band. He's much more than just the bassist, right? Neil Smith, great drummer, you know, iconic drum riffs that essentially have semi-invented some of these songs, right? Glenn Buxton, Michael Bruce, Alice. I mean, they're all participating big time. So that's Alice Cooper when it was called a band called Alice Cooper, right? And as we know, what happened later on is that when Alice went solo, he semi-quietly went and changed his name to Alice Cooper, and then basically Alice Cooper is the solo act from then on forward, right? So yes, it's sacrilege to not pick something from those early days. But having said that, almost no one's going to go out and pick Schools Out. Almost no one's going to go out and pick Muscle of Love either. The big one that probably is the number one choice of you know, anytime you take a poll on this stuff is going to be Billion Dollar Babies. So Billion Dollar Babies came out, where's my dates here? So February 73. This actually is one of the true bands that more than once put out 2 albums a year once in a while. So how many, let's see, 1, 2, twice they did that, the Alice Cooper Band. So Billion Dollar Babies has that iconic cover art and the billfold and the inserts and the, you know, the cutout stuff and the money and the white rabbits and all that stuff, right? But Hello Hooray, Elected, killer heavy song in the title track. No More Mr. Nice Guy, even Unfinished Sweet, people remember that one. I Love the Dead, Raped and Freezing. I went and played that again and realized that, that's a pretty well-known song too. So it's a big album. And one more point to make about these records. Well, let me say the other big choice first, and then I'll make this other point. But the other one that everybody picks, and it often honestly comes to mind for me as my favorite, is Welcome to My Nightmare. But Welcome to My Nightmare, of course, is, where's my copy of that? Is that kicking around here? So Welcome to My Nightmare is, of course, his first solo album, and that's a contentious thing. The band has fallen out. Alice has gone on his own. Alice and, Shep Gordon. And produced by Bob Ezrin. This one is actually, I think, the very first album of theirs that I do like the production on. I think the production is full-bodied enough and there's a lot going on. But it's got some good heavy songs in Devil's Food, Black Widow, Cold Ethel. Department of Youth is kind of Kiss-like, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, I can see. I mean, it is kind of like a musical and showy and Broadway. Only Women Bleed was a big hit. Escape is the other pretty good heavy one. So this has got as many kind of heavy songs as all the other albums, which is really only in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 songs per album. Alice Cooper is not a heavy metal band, although they always get included in that because they looked so heavy, and I'm sure it sounded much heavier live, right? And it was pretty extreme in every way. So this is the one that I always pick as first choice, and a lot of people do. So you're way contrarian on this for sure, because literally I think there are, if you did a poll, just hands down, there would be 4 albums ahead of it. And then, like you say, possibly Trashed, right? That's the name of it, Trash, not Poison. I always get this mixed up. It's Trashed and not Poison, right? But also, the heavy albums like Raise Your Fist and Yell and Constrictor would get pretty high up there. I thought
Hey Stupid.
Hey Stupid as well, yeah. And I would say even ahead of the one of these 4, is it 4 or 3 Blackout albums? There's 4, right? And this is the first one, and he's not so blacked out at this point for Flush the Fashion. Things get worse, and I don't think anybody would pick any of those further ones, but I think a lot of people do have a fondness for Flush the Fashion. But I think even if you did a poll, Schools Out would come ahead of Flush the Fashion, and maybe even Muscle of Love, and
Wow.
maybe those other ones. So the last point I wanted to make, and sorry, I'm rambling on a lot here. I'm sorry about this.
That's okay.
What we often do on the show, as you know, is we kind of cite the stats as well, because sales is a big part of this, and how much albums are played live. And Billion Dollar Babies and Welcome to My Nightmare are the 2 most represented in the live sets. That's number 1. Love It to Death, platinum. Killer, platinum. Schools Out, platinum. Billion Dollar Babies, platinum. Muscle of Love goes gold. Welcome to My Nightmare, platinum in the States, double platinum in Canada. Goes to Hell, Alice Cooper Goes to Hell went gold. And then some of those later ones, I think there's a platinum as well, maybe even a gold. Flush the Fashion didn't certify at all, right? It did upset a lot of fans with the kind of new wavy direction. But let's not forget, as you very astutely said, it's a new wavy direction, but the guitars are pretty thick and it's pretty rocking. And this is one of those albums, I went and played it again and went, man, Marco's maybe right about this. This is really enjoyable start to finish. And the last 4 songs on it are 4 of the best songs on it. That's a really cool thing about this record. I think Grim Facts is one of those, right near the end. Do you have the track list handy?
I have all my notes about the track.
Yeah, Grim Facts is a good heavy one. Talk is a cover.
Talk.
Yeah, but it's good. Clones is a good song, but that's kind of new wavy, and I could see that could be a little annoying. But I agree that it's a warm one. It's a good warm album. It's upbeat. It's optimistic. I think it's before he gets really bad with the crack and the 8 balls and the booze and all that. It's basically dropping out of society, right? But hallucinating, all that. Yeah, there's some harrowing things that he went through definitely in that period. But so this is sort of on the edge of that, and I think it's a really good album, and I applaud you for your contrarian choice, and I know you're a big Alice fan and expert, so I value your opinion on this, but so there you go. Many choices that could have been picked ahead of it, and they would have been picked way ahead of it. This one's not even close in calling your choice a contrarian choice.
Yeah, and those, like, yeah, if you look at like the sales stuff, like Flush the Fashion, it didn't sell very well. Neither did Special Fortune. Zipper Catch a Skin
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
even chart. Data didn't even chart.
Yeah.
Flush the Fashion got gold in Canada though.
Mhm.
But I think Trash is actually the next one. I'm just looking at the stats now that went like platinum and stuff like this. So that was a big kind of comeback era for Alice, which is kind of an iconic era, because like that's where a lot of people like my age who watched Wayne's World first kind of saw Alice Cooper, and Feed My Frankenstein, which came off of Hey Stupid. But that whole kind of era is iconic, and that's more when he becomes kind of like heavy metal Alice, I guess. And a lot of those bands like Kiss that were kind of just straight up rockers in the 70s, who were referred to as heavy metal in the 70s, actually kind of started becoming more heavy metal later in the like later 80s and 90s and stuff like this. But I will say that I think that era, it's kind of like everybody, when they talk about Alice Cooper albums, there's always kind of that elephant graveyard of Alice albums. Like, no, don't go over there. Like those albums, like they're weird and they're, the early 80s stuff and this and that. But like, there's some good stuff on any of those albums. Like Zipper Catches Skin, I think like there's some heavy stuff on that. Make That Money is hard. That's a hard song. And that album kind of is more almost like, rather than new wave, Zipper Catches Skin is kind of like a hard Frank Zappa-ish type album more than it is like new wavy. So I think sometimes those albums get a bad reputation. And it's probably a lot of holdover from people who grew up with, Killer, Love It to Death, Billion Dollar Babies. Like they're hitting these albums as they're coming out. And then when they get into the 80s, they get turned off by Alice, maybe even with Lace and Whiskey and the one after Lace and Whiskey. They're kind of starting to get turned off by Alice. And then that whole era is they blacked out of Alice. So now years later, the like original Alice Cooper band albums or band fans are saying, yeah, that's the bad period of Alice, because when he came back and started getting really heavy, they could kind of get back into that and start eating that again. But there's some good stuff on that. And like when you look, thank God there's YouTube and Spotify, so I didn't have to buy every single one of these albums over the past 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you look at some of the comments on YouTube and like for any one of those, even like Goes to Hell, even Lace and Whiskey, and then Flush the Fashion specifically, and Special Forces and Zipper, look at the comments. They're all like, what an underrated album, one of his best. What an underrated album, like for every, like all of those albums in a row, people are saying stuff like, wow, what a great album. Did you hear this song, and this song? Why does nobody talk about this album? Yeah. Like I'm like just floored at how brilliant this guy was in his solo career, but also the Alice Cooper band. Yeah. Like what a brilliant lineup of albums, all the way up to Trash and even beyond that a little bit, right? With Hey Stupid, I think came out after Trash.
But yeah, like, and all his modern stuff is really good too. And it's funny you say the heavy metal Alice Cooper. I mean, the modern era of Alice Cooper is also more or less the heavy metal Alice Cooper too. I mean, the most of the later stuff is pretty heavy. And he puts out a lot of albums, and it's really good quality. The one thing that bothers me with Alice that I've never liked with many bands when they do this, Elvis Costello included, or Ozzy to some extent, I just wish there was a stable lineup that even if they're young people, they could at least become a classic lineup because they're there the whole time. I don't like the shuffling in and out of players all the time. So that's another reason, obviously, people have a romanticism, a nostalgia for the original Alice Cooper band, because it was a very stable lineup right through all that stuff. And super creative people. But yeah, I really do agree though that this is a band where there are always 3 or 4 songs that you just like are not that big a fan of, even on those classic albums. And that's why certainly specifically with Schools Out and Muscle of Love, like those albums are not very, very deep, and they don't have a lot of fans. Even though Schools Out is massive Alice Cooper, platinum, and that great album cover with the fold up desk and all that stuff. there's a lot of songs in there that people just kind of go, huh? Well, I don't know. And I wanted to make a comment on, he has so many phases, right? And one of those phases is that Goes to Hell from the Inside, Lace and Whiskey from the Inside period, where those records are kind of almost like the generalist singer-songwriter. I can do anything on a record, and I'm going to be really pedestrian and like participating in the world about it. Like there's the odd heavy song, but even the heavy songs are written with just like a little bit of humor and a little bit of notching back on the production, so they're not made to seem too heavy. So it's almost like they're heavy enough to be a Walk on the Wild Side song for a regular, rock and roll radio listener. You know what I mean? Like they're almost like novelty songs in a way, when there are any heavy songs on those records. And then there's a lot of just straight up, basically songs that sound like they could be on a TV show, right?
Yeah.
So,
TV show.
yeah, that's a very weird period. What's that?
TV show themes, even some of us.
Yeah. And From the Inside is the mellowest of those three, right?
Yeah. He seems to be more influenced by Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart more than I think people realize. If you like listen to his albums and his songs, because there is like a lot of humor, a lot of like dialogue, a lot of things that you heard on Frank Zappa songs and like Captain Beefheart type stuff before.
Well, remember he was signed to Frank's label in the very beginning.
Right. The first couple albums, right?
Yeah.
Which
there was
over. Yeah, which I went back and listened to, and I don't know if anybody would pick those first two as.
No, they're
I
very.
think there may be some. Sorry.
Yeah, they're very weird and off the wall and really not that good. But Frank liked them because they literally sound like 60s Frank Zappa in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
So
let me get into some of the songs here on Flush the Fashion. So, like I like that the lyrics are kind of weird. They are kind of horror themed, same as earlier albums, right? Clones has a wicked crunching guitar sound and a great hook. Even like Leather Boots, which isn't such like a hard rocker, there's a guitar riff right in the middle of the song. That's, I wouldn't say is the guitar solo, but it's like, it rocks just as much as anything else on this album or even like early stuff. And that's not like a rocker off the album. But what I like about the album too is you might not realize, like, it's a short album. It's under 30 minutes. I think every song is like 2 minutes, except for like, I think Pain is like 4, which I love Pain. And you could slide Pain right into Welcome to My Nightmare or even like $1 Billion Babies, right? Like nobody would notice. I know I say that a lot and I use that analogy a lot, but I say that because I think sometimes it's easy to kind of understand like why I like this album so much. Like, yeah, I might really love Caught in a Dream and Ballad of Dwight Fry, Second Coming. Like there's songs I love that I would probably say I love better than any individual song off Flush. Mm-hmm. But when you get to, like, you mentioned Grim Facts, like already it's like, hey, I'm like 7 tracks in and I like all the tracks so far.
Yeah. Let me make a point before I forget. Another reason people don't like this album, I think a little bit subconsciously, horrible album cover, just a real mess. It looks like an anti-album cover. And the fact that it says Alice Cooper '80. I mean, there's almost like this cognitive dissonance, this thing that annoys you, and it almost makes it less of a legitimate Alice Cooper album when you do that. Didn't Kiss do that on Hot in the Shade or one of those? Kiss, it got 79 in the title.
Oh yeah,
80.
Double Platinum. Wasn't it Double Platinum?
No, I don't know why. I thought one of them's called like Hot in the Shade 89 or something. One of those.
I remember the song from Double Platinum, Strutter 79.
Yeah. I don't know why I think that. I mean, or there's a sticker on it that says Kiss 89 or something. I don't know. Anyways, that really annoys me about Flush the Fashion. that it's like, okay, well, is this a real Alice Cooper album or is it an Alice Cooper 80 Alice Cooper album? Anyways, go on. Back to the songs.
I won't disagree with you about the album cover and Alice is kind of, if you look at his album covers, they're kind of hit and miss all the time. Like he has a really cool one and then kind of like a weird one. Probably if you were going to go contrarian and say, what's the best Alice Cooper album cover? I think Constrictor, the one where he's got the snake tied around his neck and it's coming out of his mouth. No, I love that album
so many great ones. I mean, look at Killer, right? Look at $1 Billion Babies. $1 Billion Babies got to be one of the greatest album covers of all time, right? School's Out's a great album cover. So
Welcome to My Nightmare.
Yeah, Welcome as well. And what else? Goes to Hell is not bad. Let's see.
Well, that's just his face, right?
Bad. From the inside's not bad. It's got a gatefold, so he's got a lot of really good ones. But I think I don't think you could be too contrary. Even Greatest Hits is a great album cover with that cool drawing illustration. But but no, I mean basically you're right. They are hit and miss, but I don't think you could go contrarian against either Killer or Billion Dollar Babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of cool album cover. Even Dad does weird. I think if you hold it back, it looks like a skull or something like this, but it looks like an old timey kind of painting, like a. But I like the song. Like yourself and Nick, you guys talk a lot about production and stuff like this. I'm more of a layman when it comes to music production. Although I can tell with some of the stuff with the Alice Cooper band albums, you can hear Bob Ezrin as soon as you hear the piano. To me, right? Because it's also the same as like on Destroyer. But like when you go back to the songs, I just like Blush and Fashion. Aspirin Damage is good. Like I find Alice Cooper's vocals are as good as ever. Model Citizen is another classic Alice type song. But then it's like, okay, now you're at Grim Facts. You're 7 tracks in. You kind of like all of them. You're kind of hitting them pretty quick because they're all about 2 minutes. And then it ends pretty strong too. You get Straight Up Rockers, Dance Yourself to Death, and Headlines. And like Headlines has plenty of cowbell for the sickos that like that kind of thing. But it's got a cool breakdown at the end. It's a good way to tie up the album. And I kind of feel like those classic albums always kind of fall apart by the last couple of tunes.
Yeah.
So to me, but Alice, one thing Alice does is almost every one of his album has a good first track to start you off. I just like I said, I don't think this album's any less than any of the other Alice albums. And I know I know there's some people that comment on our videos. I'm just waiting to see what they're gonna say about this one. But I like it. I like it a lot. Maybe because the fact that it was kind of that, don't go swimming in the deep end, stay away from there. And then when you kind of go in, you're like, hey, this is actually really good. That you kind of start, maybe my vision is more like I praise this a little bit more because you're almost told like, those albums are bad. And then you listen to it, you're like, whoa, those albums are great. So.
Cool. Right on. Oh yeah. It's awesome. It's a great choice, and it's a perfect choice for the show because you firmly believe it, and you've convinced me too. I mean, I'm almost there with you. I mean, it's always been one of my favorites. I don't think I would ever have done a list where it wasn't in my top 5 at least, right?
Hey, and I've also heard you say, like some of these albums that people champion, like, yeah, there's like 3 or 4 great songs, but like when you start counting 2, 3, 4 songs that aren't great, you got half a bad album, half a great album.
That's what I've argued on other episodes as well. And that kind of was my main thrust of my Deep Purple one when I picked Perfect Strangers. I just liked way more songs on it than when I actually went to the albums. I've even had I've had an argument recently with my YouTube industry group about I love those Paul Chapman UFO albums because when I go back to the Michael Schenker albums, everybody starts talking about iconic songs, but when they go to the actual album, they're not so hot on picking one of those albums, and it's a clue to me that sure, I mean, No Place to Run's my favorite UFO album, right? And it's because when I go back in the harsh light of day and look at Lights Out or Obsession or I mean, No Heavy Petting's probably my very, very close second favorite, but Force It certainly. Everybody talks about the great songs, and that's exactly what's happening in this Alice Cooper episode. So you're absolutely right in that. It's a percentage game as well, this thing.
Yeah. But you're right about the album cover. I'm not going to argue that. And I got to see Alice too. And like you said, always having members switch in and out. When I saw him, I think Eric Singer was drumming in like 2006 or 7. I guess he was kind of on a break from Kiss or whatever. So that was kind of cool because I'm a Kiss and Alice Cooper fan. So I got to see Eric with Alice. But
yeah. Okay, so why don't you wrap us up, Marco? I mean, I guess we're done.
Yeah, so we kind of hit on a bunch of different points. Early Alice Cooper band stuff is the psychedelic 60s kind of thing. I don't think anybody picks that as being the best. Then you have a great string of albums, which I'm not going to deny. Any one of those you could toss up as being his best, maybe except School's Out and Muscle for Love. And there's good stuff on those albums too, I think. Then you have like the solo period starting. Martin made a good point by saying, later on, he's got all these bands kind of shuffling in and out. But even the blackout period kind of had a solid lineup of members. And I think Bob Ezrin even produced one of those albums. I wonder if he remembers producing it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and it's a cliche to say, underrated, I think, for those albums. I think that's kind of cliched. And maybe people are going to make fun of me for being a millennial, for saying Flush the Fashion is the best. My thing is just song for song. I love some of the Alice Cooper Band songs individually more than stuff on Flush, but all the tracks I like. So I'm going to say, for one album out of all the amazing Alice Cooper albums that I can say I like every song start to finish, I'm just going to put that just an edge above some of the other stuff that people say is more classic.
Very
So
cool. We'll go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, I guess we'll live on to fight another day. I was really excited about this episode, and I think you can hear it in my voice. I don't know if, Martin, you want to give any last final thoughts?
I don't think so. I think that's really cool. We're, at this point, we definitely want you to comment below and subscribe. We will chime in on the comments as well. We love reading them, and we love remarking on what you remarked. So yeah, until next time, this is Marco and Martin signing off for the Contrarians.